So Michael Saylor just announced today that he's going to go out there and buy another $600 million of Bitcoin. Bitcoin's currently flirting with its all-time high once again. So we thought today would be the perfect day to expose Michael Saylor's simple 5-step Bitcoin accumulation flywheel. Okay, so we're going to start explaining what this flywheel is, how this feedback loop is driving the price of MicroStrategy to its, let's say, 22-year highs. But before we do that and cover what the flywheel is, let's quickly hit on the news. So MicroStrategy came out and they announced that they're going to be offering more convertible senior notes. Okay, so what is a convertible senior note? Well, let's go to the official press conference. Now, all this is essentially Michael Saylor is selling $700 million of his shares. And it's essentially like a loan. And he's going to go out there and use the $700 million to buy more Bitcoin. Okay, that's the very high level, simplified way of explaining what these notes are. Okay, so he's doing this at 0.625%. So that is a very, very low interest rate. And Michael has a lot of demand for these notes because he came out earlier in the week and he's already increased the amount he's going to be buying Bitcoin with by $100 million. Okay, so Bitcoin Archive puts it nicely here. MicroStrategy just borrowed $700 million for 6 years with a tiny 0.625% interest rate. 100 million more than initially announced earlier in the week. So Michael Saylor is going on a buying rampage right now. The Bitcoin therapist kind of put this into a little bit more perspective for us. So we can see Michael Saylor is about to smash buy 10,600 Bitcoin for $700 million. Now, this is going to actually increase MicroStrategy's holdings above 200,000 coins. And this is going to take him much closer to that 1% of the total Bitcoin supply. So for Michael Saylor to have 1% of the total Bitcoin supply, he's going to need around 210,000 Bitcoin. Okay, so now let's actually talk about this 5-step flywheel in a little bit more detail. We can see here, again, credit where credit is due. This originally came from a Twitter account called Rip Van Winkle. That's a fun little name. But you can see here, it's a pretty simple little flywheel. So MicroStrategy simply goes out there and buys more Bitcoin. Now, as Bitcoin appreciates, this is actually going to increase MicroStrategy's market cap. That's another way of kind of saying enterprise value. Okay. Again, we kind of dumbed it down a little bit on the thumbnail for you guys. Now, again, as MicroStrategy's market cap or enterprise value increases, MicroStrategy's stock price also goes up. So as the price of Bitcoin goes up, this helps MicroStrategy. And as MicroStrategy's stock price goes up, MicroStrategy simply issues more shares. So he dilutes the shares. And guess what he does with that dilution? He goes and buys more Bitcoin. As the price of Bitcoin goes up, it increases MicroStrategy's enterprise value. And guess what? The cycle rinses and repeats over and over and over again. Now, if you want to actually look at one of the craziest stock price charts there is in history, it's this one, and it is MicroStrategy. So before we really zoom out, I want to show you more recent price action because it's pretty incredible how far it is rallying. So from peak to trough, it actually tripled this year. So we can see I've kind of drawn this from January 2024, and peak to trough, it increased about 200%. So that's a tripling. It's absolutely incredible. MicroStrategy kind of briefly put in a new all-time high above its 2021 all-time high this week. And when you zoom out, this is where things get really fun. Have a look at MicroStrategy's stock price back in the 1990s stock, 2000 kind of technology bubble that happened. Okay. It was absolutely incredible watching how far that thing crashed. And you can see MicroStrategy was pretty much dead for 20 years until he employed the Bitcoin strategy. And when he employed the Bitcoin strategy, he essentially breathed life back into the company. It's incredible how far they have actually come. Now, something else that's incredible is Jim Cramer. Now, we're going to play this video for you guys. I'm going to set all of that up because I think it's a very interesting video that you guys should all see. Because Jim Cramer is obviously, he's known as the top signal in Bitcoin. So whenever he says something, typically the opposite happens in the Bitcoin space. So we're going to play this video, and crazy enough, Jim Cramer actually believes that MicroStrategy buying this Bitcoin is actually a sign that the top is in for Bitcoin. So there's a few traders out there actually believe that the top is in for Bitcoin. And it's pretty crazy, really, because we have people like Capo believing the top in Bitcoin is in. And now we also have Jim Cramer. So I'm going to play this video. Turn on.
I can prop it up. I don't know. But you have very smart people like Michael Saylor, the CEO of MicroStrategy, selling $600 million in convertible bonds to buy more Bitcoin. Hey, look, that can prop it up. I don't know. I always find it curious, though, when someone announces their intention to buy something without the slightest degree of caginess. It's kind of like he wants to walk it up or something. Now, against all of these signs of a top, what do we have aside from the rotation? But you have...
So we have all these signs of a top. Jim Cramer believes that Bitcoin has put in a top before its 2024 Bitcoin halving. This would be unprecedented. It would actually be very unprecedented that Bitcoin puts in a top before its halving. But again, this kind of goes to show how pivotal MicroStrategy's, accumulation strategy has been. It's been absolutely incredible. And I want to actually show you what it's done for the business, because this chart right here is going to teach us a lot about this 5-step flywheel that I believe we are seeing in the Bitcoin space executed by Michael Saylor. So you can see the green dots show when Saylor's actually bought Bitcoin. Now you can actually see that he's pretty much bought the top, he's bought the bottom, he's bought Bitcoin absolutely everywhere, and he bought more Bitcoin only a couple of weeks ago on February 26th. He announced he'd bought another 3,000 Bitcoin, and now this week he came out and he said he's going to be buying even more Bitcoin. And it's pretty crazy. The Bitcoin he bought in the end of February looks like it's already up by 30%. Take a look at that in the profit and loss column here. We can see that purchase is already up by 30%. It's honestly incredible. When you zoom back and have a look at some of his earlier purchases, you can see how well he has done. Up by 200% in some of, up by 479% on the Bitcoin he bought in August 11th, 2020. So this is what a Bitcoin strategy can do for the company. We can see at the very top here that MicroStrategy's all-time profit and loss, he's gained about $7 billion worth of value on his Bitcoin treasury, and it's all-time up by 112%. So his Bitcoin strategy seems to be doing pretty well. Now, this 5-step flywheel that we've talked today is kind of along the same lines as something else we've talked about in the future. We in the past, I should say, sorry. We've talked about Michael Saylor copying the secret playbook of Germany's richest man back in their 1920s hyperinflation. Now, we're going to touch on that in just a second, but I've seen that someone in the live chat today has actually been employing a MicroStrategy flywheel or a speculative attack of themselves. Austin in the chat has said he's just accepted an offer on his home today, downsizing to buy more Bitcoin. Firstly, congratulations, Austin. And I think this is like a brilliant move. Again, nothing here is about financial advice, but I think lots of people have a home that's simply too big, and it is possible to downsize and buy more Bitcoin. Because as Michael Saylor's shown, if you've employed a Bitcoin strategy over the past 4 years, he's been able to double his treasury by 112%. In a video I did on my personal YouTube channel this week, I showed how I was actually able to accumulate 4 extra Bitcoin in 2018 by not paying rent and going to live in a van. And I saved myself about 12,000 Australian dollars in rent by doing that for a year and a half. And I was, theoretically and hypothetically able to buy 4 more Bitcoin. So congratulations, Austin, on employing the speculative attack against the dollar. Now, I want to show you something that we touched on a little while ago. Now, this was Michael Saylor's secret playbook, okay? So he essentially copied exactly what Germany's richest man did during their hyperinflation in the 1920s, okay? So his name was Hugo Steins, and he did something very pivotal in the 1920s hyperinflation. He took out debt and he simply bought a lot of businesses because he knew that the currency was actually going to continue depreciating in this 1920s hyperinflation that was happening in Germany. And you guys can see that things got pretty crazy during this hyperinflation. We can see that the German mark actually saw 8 corrections larger than 50% in only 6 years in the 1920s. So it shows that when things get pretty volatile, you typically need a good hedge. So this man who took on a bunch of debt to buy hard money, gold, real estate, and businesses, he became Germany's richest man by doing this. And by the end of the hyperinflation, he actually owned 15% of all of the companies in Germany by 1924. So he went from a single business owner, he only had one business, to owning 15% of all the businesses in Germany in only 6 years. So obviously, we believe that Michael Saylor is doing the same. So Michael Saylor, like Hugo Steins, is borrowing as much fiat or depreciating currency as he can to buy hard assets. The only difference is Michael Saylor is going all in on Bitcoin. Instead of buying cash flowing businesses, maybe he's taking a more risky approach and just doubling down on the one asset that he believes is going to outperform everything else. So that's what Michael Saylor's secret playbook is. That's a little bit about what Michael Saylor's 5-step flywheel is and how he's actually using this to accumulate more Bitcoin. We'd love to hear from you guys. How long can this flywheel go on for? Many people were actually surprised that Saylor is still buying Bitcoin and taking on debt and selling shares in these convertible bond offerings, even though the Bitcoin ETFs have launched. Many people thought that now that the ETFs have launched, a little bit of demand would actually go away from Michael Saylor because of these ETFs are available to the market. But clearly not. Clearly, there's still demand for Michael Saylor to sell these convertible bonds. And we can see that it has had a tremendous impact on the stock price of MicroStrategy. That's a wild chart. Just have a look at, it bleed and flatline for 23 years. But it looks as if Michael Saylor has done the impossible. So if you actually want to learn a little bit more about 1924, that playbook that Michael Saylor is copying, we did a video breaking down how Michael Saylor is employing and stealing this secret playbook. After the live stream's finished, I'm going to pop a link to the video we filmed on that topic right about there. And with all that said, thank you to everyone who tuned in. We will see you guys in the next live stream.